Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to do big damages with Sucrose. She's a very versatile character. She can be a support, she can be a big damage dealer. There's just no team where she's going to be bad in, except for maybe a Geo team. I don't know. She's a master alchemist, and I'm going to show you how and why, and hopefully give you a better understanding of how to play her. Starting out with the build, I have almost 890 elemental mastery on my Sucrose, and almost no crit to speak of. But that doesn't matter, because what does matter is the swirl damage that we're going to be doing. Now for her weapons, the Sacrificial Fragments is definitely her best in slot weapon. Until a 5-star with Elemental Mastery comes out, this is going to be the best. It also makes it so you can use your elemental skill more often because it has a chance to reset the cooldown. Another option can be Map a Mare, but I would honestly choose the Magic Guide over it, just because I like to run a taser team and its passive effect is good for that. If you don't have either of these weapons, you can go full support and run Thurling Tales of the Dragon Slayer. And if not, you can have the Emerald Orb, which also has Elemental Mastery as a substat. Now moving on to her artifacts. Viridescent Venerer is going to be the set to run on her. And you're going to want to cram as much Elemental Mastery as you possibly can into your artifacts. And yes, I know my substats are terrible, but this is just the best I have come up with in months of farming for this set. So, you know, keep that in mind. What we mostly want is the Elemental Mastery. Crit doesn't hurt, but it's far from being necessary. Now, just from these artifacts alone, you'll see the swirl damage is increased 492%. That's huge. And anyways, on to the constellations. Her first constellation is arguably her best because it gives you an additional charge and it makes it so you can use her elemental skill a lot more often, especially when it's on cooldown. And her constellation 2 increases the duration of your ultimate, which is very nice. And the 3 is just an upgrade for your elemental skill, pretty standard. And her 4 makes it so you can reduce your cooldown, which, you know, it doesn't sound that amazing, but it is quite helpful. And then Constellation 5 increases the level of your ultimate. Now, Constellation 6, on the other hand, is pretty good. A Forbidden Creation Isomer 75 Type 2 triggers an elemental absorption. All party members gain a 20% elemental damage bonus for the corresponding absorbed element during its duration. Now what this means is if I hit an enemy with Hydro and then I use her ultimate, the Hydro is going to be increased for all of my characters that deal Hydro damage. Or if it hits water or whatever. Now anyways, her normal attack does not have very big modifiers. I wouldn't recommend leveling this up very much. You can if you want, but it's not going to be that amazing. Anyways, and her second ability is basically a vacuum. You get big swirl damage, sucks in enemies. Pretty nice, has a pretty decent modifier. And her ultimate is basically a bigger vacuum that runs for quite a while. And as said before, there's going to be one element absorbed into it. So really be mindful about where you toss this because it can absorb campfires, water, anything really. So if you want to do vaporize, do fire, like hit the enemy with fire and then cast her ultimate and then you'll be dealing more fire damage. And it does damage over time with the absorbed element, which is really nice. And it's super good crowd control. Some of the best. Not as good as Venti, but still really nice. And also, she has some really good buffing mechanics. She gives 50 elemental mastery for the corresponding element of what she swirls. And also 20% of her elemental mastery for using any of her skills. So in my case, it'll be about 180 elemental mastery from this, and then another 50 from the other one. So that's 230 elemental mastery for my other characters, which is super nice. And also she has a chance to obtain more items when you craft. And that's a really nice skill. All right, now that might have been a lot to take in, but I'm going to break it down for you in the rest of this video. Now I'll start out with a demonstration of how she works. Cast Oz, do some swirls, the electros increase, the enemy's dead. There you go. Now here's some great teams. She works in pretty much any team. This is my team I use for the Abyss. I got Jean for the heals and basically a taser setup. And you can run a nuke team if you want. A lot of people seem to like to do this. It's not my thing. I don't really like this type of playstyle, but to each their own. You can have Bennett, Mona, and then whatever your nuke character is. And yes, my Bennett is low level because I just don't really play with Bennett. And anyways, you can also run a Vaporized team. Vaporized team with Sucrose is super strong. It's incredible. Use Zhang Ling and Xingqiu or Mona. And have someone for a healing or shield. I have Zhongli here to shred the resistances even more. But my favorite team that I've been running a lot lately is with Raiden Shogun, Fischl, and Xingqiu. This is my super taser team. It works so well. But you can replace Raiden with Beidou, because most people probably won't have Raiden, or if you do, or if you just like Beidou more. Now, anyways, now I'll explain the Viridescent Vinegar set. The 2-piece gives you a 15% animo damage bonus, which isn't the meat of this. The big part is the 4-piece. It increases swirl damage by 60%, and it decreases elemental resistance for the enemies by 40%. That's massive. That's one of the biggest debuffs, if not the biggest debuff in the entire game. And it really shows when you are killing enemies. Like, for instance, here, I'll hit 25,000 with the Bloom with Ganyu, swirl the enemy, and there we go, 32,000. And also, of course, elemental reactions are going to be stronger. Like with right here, hit it with the cryo, charge attack, 21,900 something. And now let's do this with Sucrose. Swirl the fire, hit it with the cryo, and there, 37,400 something. You can also do crazy shit like this, like I was talking about earlier with Bennett, Mona, nukes. This is not my playstyle, but you can definitely do this if you feel like. It's a way to play her. You could hit some pretty fat numbers, much bigger than that. This is the way I like to play her, though. Is lots of damage over time, lots of small damage, many times. And it works pretty well for me and my playstyle. And here's another version I like with the Vape team I was talking about earlier. It's just so incredibly strong. They're just dead. They're just instantly dead. So yeah, highly recommend either of these teams. And now, if you're thinking my supports are what's really doing all the damage, I'll show you that her swirl is not to be underestimated. She'll come out of the bush. We'll get some skills going, and boom. She is very powerful. Now here's in a domain. I think this is actually the domain to farm her artifacts. And they're dead. So yeah, you can try to run a DPS, a typical DPS crit setup. You can try and force that, but it's not going to be as good. I've tried this in various different ways. Here's with the Lost Prayer and a crit damage circlet. You're doing a little more damage with the hits, but the swirl damage is only 4,702. Now when I switch back to my Sacrificial Fragments and my Elemental Mastery Circlet, I'll be doing more damage overall. Bring out Oz, Swirl. And now the swirls are 6,514. And that definitely makes up the difference from the higher base. Now I'm going to test this out against the Primo Giova shot. This is my taser team. I won't be using Raiden Shogun's ult just to showcase what Sucrose can do on her own. Yeah, be mindful that Sucrose is pretty squishy too, so it is advised to run a healer or a shielder if you're going to be running this type of team. Yeah, just absolutely wrecks the thing. Yeah, she's crazy good. I love Sucrose. I want to play that again, but sped up. It's just so satisfying. Now, in Abyss, I've noticed that it doesn't even matter what the enemies are. Like here, these are slimes, and I'm using a setup with mostly electro damage, and I'm still destroying them because of the water and other enemies that are getting infused. Oh, I did a challenge in an event not very long ago where every day I ran the same team. If you want to check that out, look in the cards. I did a version for every day with the same characters, and it was pretty crazy. I even took out the shields of the Abyss Herald and Lecter. It's pretty crazy. So see, just doing a ton of great work against these enemies. Raiden. Slashy, slashy. Alright, now I'm going to show a 12-1. The infamous 12-1 with the super tanky enemies. Both sides. So I'll start out with the first side. Also, Raiden is great on this team because Sucrose has a really high energy cost. And I just thought that maybe with Xingqiu I could possibly take off the sack sword and replace it with a different weapon, since I have Raiden restoring energy so much. I just now thought of that as recording this. I'll have to give that a try and see how that goes, because that ultimately might result in me doing more damage with Xingqiu. But anyways, shred these guys. These guys are so tanky. They're just so annoying. It's like if you don't kill them both at the same time, yeah, you know how it goes. I'm pretty excited for the next Abyss to see what that's like. I'm not liking the tides, so I won't miss this Abyss at all. As you can see, pretty quick. And here's old footage of my original Abyss team. Absolutely shredding these agents. Using Jean to yeet them in the air. And this is before Sucrose was level 90. She's only 81 in this footage, and she's still just wrecking these guys, so. Keep that in mind, when you're higher level, you do more damage with swirls, electrocharge, etc., etc. So that is a good reason to level. Now, even the super thick and tanky Sisson Mage is just getting shredded. Still taking a while, to be fair. This still takes me quite a bit. But with a pretty simple setup like this, it's not bad. And I've noticed for some reason the yeeting works with her sometimes, but not other times. I know after a certain point it stops working, but her mechanics seem really wonky for her fall damage, and I don't know why. But that's something for another video. I'm not even worried about her because she's just gonna get destroyed. And yes, the same team can kill the rest of the Abyss just fine, kill Mega Kinky, the end. And if that didn't convince you, you can also collect dandelion seeds with her. And crafting. This might be the next 2 pieces you need to upgrade your weapon. So if anything, that's a great reason to get Sucrose. And it works with so many items. This is just such a nice ability to have. Is to get extra goodies. And I pulled her as my first 4-star on my alt account. And she has no artifacts on, and she's still just so good. She's such a good character. She just does crazy damage, even just right off the bat. So yeah, thank you for watching my video about Sucrose. Hopefully you learned something, or have a better idea of how you want to play Sucrose, if you want to have her be your main damage dealer or be your best support. She's just a crazy good character. She's one of my very favorites. She's super cute and she does a ton of damage. And I highly recommend her for pretty much any team. Anyways, if you want to see more Genshin Impact content, please leave a like and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Bye.